parts of England and Wales especially. Again, some heavy ones are possible, but they'll be very hit and miss. A good part of the day will be dry and bright, and in the sunny spells, it'll feel pretty warm once more. Bye for now.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It is 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight. Are police too afraid of being called racist to stop the machete madness? And
experts also agree ULEZ is the most effective policy in cleaning up air in the world.
Sadiq Khan flies off to lecture the Pope about ULEZ. The climate cult is a new religion. Stop teaching 9-year-old kids about sex in schools. Also,
no one should be put on this scheme if they are a threat to the public. And let me be crystal clear, it does not apply. Let me be absolutely clear, it does not apply to anyone serving a life sentence.
Well, a GB News exclusive proves that this isn't true, and
can confirm that the United Kingdom has no legal obligation to accept returns of illegal migrants from Ireland.
Well, that's another lie, isn't it? How many illegals have we taken back from Ireland?
I haven't even got anything on my lanyard. I'm just wearing it to wind up the Minister for Common Sense.
Labour on the lanyard wind-up, but
must be the only tech brother on the continent.
Oh, gosh. Keir Starmer has had an absolute shocker at PMQs. On my panel tonight, it is the Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. We've got landlord Adam Brooks and author Rebecca Reid. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Sacrifice yourself at the altar of climate lunacy. Next.
Good evening. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Slovakia's Prime Minister's in a critical condition and still undergoing surgery after he was shot following a government meeting in Handlover outside the capital, Bratislava. Officials could be seen bundling Robert Fico into a car shortly after the attacker shot him 5 times in the assassination attempt. Mr Fico was airlifted to hospital. 1 man has been detained by authorities. Mr Fico won power for a 4th time last October and has implemented more pro-Russian policies. He's pledged to stop military support for Ukraine and threatened to veto the country's membership in NATO. Slovakia's Interior Minister says they believe the attacker had political motivation. In other news, new proposals could see schools in England banned from teaching students about gender identity. The government's review would also see all sex education halted for children under the age of 9. The Prime Minister ordered the review last year amid concerns some children were being exposed to inappropriate content. Reports suggest parents will be provided samples of sex education content before lessons take place. Police could make more use of existing stop and search powers as part of new measures to tackle knife crime. The searches were curbed a decade ago by then Home Secretary Theresa May after it was found minorities were being disproportionately targeted. £3.5 million will be invested into developing new technology which could help police detect suspects carrying knives by scanning them from a distance. And Sir Keir Starmer used all 6 questions at Prime Minister's Questions today to grill the Prime Minister about overcrowded prisons as emergency measures were triggered to deal with the problem in England. It means defendants in police custody remain there and will not be transferred to courts for bail hearings. The Labour leader referenced a recent report which says high-risk prisoners are being released up to 70 days early at short notice without sufficient planning. On Monday, the Prime Minister suggested Labour can't be trusted with national security.
The early release of stalkers, domestic abusers and those considered a risk to children sound like the work of someone who is making the country more secure.
Mr Speaker, as I've said, no one should be put on this scheme if they are a threat to the public. And let me be crystal clear, it does not apply. Let me be absolutely clear, it does not apply to anyone serving a life sentence, anyone convicted of a serious violent offence, anyone convicted of terrorism, anyone convicted of a sex offence. And crucially, in contrast to the system that Labour had put in place, Mr Speaker, governors in the prison service have an absolute lock so that no one is put on the scheme who shouldn't be.
For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning that QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's over to Patrick.
Sadiq Khan is off to meet the Pope to tell him about ULEZ. The climate crisis really is the new religious cult, isn't it? It will be interesting to see whether or not the Mayor of London is capable of lying directly into the face of one of the holiest men on earth about how much he cares about the planet. He'll be flying there, I imagine, as will his team. The ULEZ expansion raised £27 million from ordinary, hard-working people in the middle of a cost of living crisis in the first month alone, reportedly. For what? Absolutely minimal gain. A study found that the biggest reductions in air pollution actually happened before ULEZ was introduced. Khan's also a frothing hypocrite. He and his entourage have racked up more than 430,000 air miles since he was first elected in 2016. That is enough to fly around the world 17 times, and it is estimated to have pumped out around 200 tonnes of carbon into the atmosphere. Mayor Khan faced criticism for a 5-day trip to the United States in 2022, in which he was seen schmoozing with James Corden on a rooftop terrace bar in Los Angeles after visiting a cannabis factory. There's no climate emergency for him, is there? He was even accused of striking a deal with United Airlines so that he could get free flights. That man's carbon footprint alone is probably responsible for at least a dozen dead polar bears and a few acres of melted ice caps every single year. But this is the reality of our globalist leaders. Sadiq Khan cares more about shaking the Pope's hand and telling him about 15-minute cities and exhaust fumes than he does about people being stabbed to death in his city every single day. Here's the reality, OK? Some headlines from the last few days for you. Horror 3 days in London with stabbings and shootings. Here's another one. Hunt for machete gang after brutal attack in Woolwich. Another one. 2 teenagers charged with attempted murder after a young man shot and stabbed in Dagenham. Another one here. A woman in her 60s was stabbed to death at a bus stop by a man trying to steal her purse. Huge numbers of rapes, sexual assaults and muggings. Last night, a woman was shot as rival gangs fired at each other in Stamford Hill. OK? Scenes like this are happening every single day in our capital. Every day. It's everyday stuff like that. Jews are afraid to walk the street on Saturdays because he's got the pro-Palestine mob rampaging through his city. He doesn't care.
I was on the streets at night time and see about the gangs running around with machetes, because that's the stories I am hearing.
I say in a respectful way, I think the Tory candidates should stop watching The Wire. We're not living in Baltimore.
Disingenuous and odious. Sadiq Khan's priority is swanning off to the Vatican to go and shake hands with the Pope so he can grandstand about net zero with other mayors from around the world who are committed to, and I quote, putting inclusive climate action at the centre of all urban decision-making to create thriving and equitable communities for everyone. I hope they ask for forgiveness when they're there from the Pope, because I think there's a special place in hell for people who turn a blind eye to the suffering of the people they are paid to represent so that they can act like the big man in front of the globalist elite. But let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. I'm joined by the Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. I've got businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and I've got author and broadcaster Rebecca Reid. Mark, I'll start with you. Should Sadiq Khan be going to shake hands with the Pope so we can tell him about you, Les?
Doesn't seem to be a particularly good use of resources, does it? And I worry, Patrick, as you've highlighted, that the obsession with climate change policies, which I think are completely overcooked, distracts from some other major policy areas where you think something practical could be done. I mean, we're getting ever more hysterical about climate change. It started as climate change, then it became the climate crisis, the climate emergency, what next, the climate apocalypse. I don't deny some of the science here, but it is a new religion, because any criticism of it and the Spanish Inquisition pay you a visit. So I would rather that the re-elected mayor spent his time a bit closer to home dealing with some of the issues that you've just focused on.
And this is not just a London thing, right? I know that he's the mayor of London, and, you know, it's easy to, for a lot of our viewers around the country to assume, well, this doesn't apply to you. But I think it does apply to you, because I think, Adam, that this is symptomatic now of a global-looking elite who are very easy for them to swan off and do stuff like this. But actually, what's going on in the places they're supposed to represent is a nightmare that we're all living in.
Again, I'm a knife crime campaigner, anti-knife crime campaigner, and if people knew what I knew about the gangs that are in London, they'd be even more scared. You know, I know a lot more than most. I've been involved, you know, around the edges. It is like a war zone, London, and our mayor is now flitting off on a plane to see the Pope. Basically, the Pope is there to spread this message, this climate alarmism around the world to all his followers. It is a religion. And again, you know, we only have to look at people like Greta Thunberg. How are people obsessing over a Swedish schoolgirl that talks absolute nonsense, gets arrested, but they worship her like she's some sort of hero? At the end of the day, Sadiq Khan is the co-chair of C40 Cities. Their aims are to restrict daily meat allowance, to restrict calories intake per people, to restrict the limit on flights that we can take, and the phasing out of private car ownership. This is a nutty group. This is an extreme group that our mayor co-chairs. Okay. And you know, I can't believe people are swallowing it.
Rebecca, is this something that, you know, our leaders should really be doing, swanning off, meeting the Pope, when everything is not rosy in the garden back home?
I think if you can do both, then you should do both, but he clearly can't do both. And I live in London. I don't love the scenes of knife crime. I'm sure everybody else feels the same. I think some of Sadiq's ideas are good. For instance, air quality, particularly for young children in the city, is very poor. And for instance, studies have shown that women who have pregnancies in London have soot in their placenta due to the air quality. So that's obviously not good. We don't like that. But it's about finding a balanced way that we can heal that problem long term. But you can't expect people to swallow this level of knife crime on a day-to-day basis because long term the air will be cleaner. You've got to be able to do both because otherwise people are going to feel like you're not doing your job.
Yeah, and is there a bigger picture here, Mark, about a kind of global climate agenda? Because people will point absolutely and say, you know, some of the science here is nailed on. You know, we don't want to all asphyxiate to death because of the fumes that are coming out of our car. And I'm not trying to, you know, say that absolutely everything is part of some kind of weird cult. But at the same time, I do think that, you know, a group of mayors from all around the world going to meet the Pope to give their climate crisis some legitimacy as well. I do find that a bit odd.
Yeah, I agree with that. And look, one of the problems I've got is that the particular issue of CO2 seems to out-trump every other environmental concern. You know, the things like air quality are not specifically to do with CO2, but we're so fixated that the sort of world's about to come to an end. And you know what, Patrick? All of these sort of big conferences, they're called COPs, aren't they? The Conference of the Parties. We're always told this is the last chance to save the human race. To which I say, hurrah, there doesn't need to be another conference then, right? We'll either succeed or we'll fail. But there's always another conference.
And I think as well that there is something... look, I might be barking up the wrong tree here, but for me there's something slightly sinister about going and meeting the Pope. There are people, especially in a lot of parts of the less developed world, where for obvious reasons, the Pope is, you know, whatever that guy says. You go,
that's why they're using
Catholic enclaves of countries where people are Catholic. He's not.
Yeah, but there's not just enclaves in parts of South America. That is Catholic, you know.
The Pope has been a huge climate change activist for many, many years. In 2015, he wrote something called an encyclical, which is a letter that goes to all the bishops, where he said that the climate change was going to be his main focus during his tenure as Pope. He always cared about it.
But these mayors' carbon footprints, right, will absolutely smash any of ours to pieces. So
let's remember, we've had people like Al Gore in America tell us the world's going to end for decades, yet his family owned private jets, and he turned around and said, it's not mine, it's my wife's. These are the biggest hypocrites in the world.
Why don't they do it all on a Zoom call?
Right.
Why don't they do it on a Zoom call?
A lot of the time they do, but I think we all agree. You guys generally say people have to get in the same room to have good ideas, get back to work.
These are people in the same room having bad ideas.
So we all think work from home is a good idea now.
Patrick, there is nothing that we do in this country, let alone the cities, that will change the climate one iota here or around the world in the future.
Absolutely not true.
It's not. There is no evidence to say. There is no evidence to say that anything that we do. There is no evidence.
Nothing we do
as a country
evidence could change the climate at all.
So
if we burn coal all day, every day, don't think it would make a difference.
This country is so small on the world stage. We make no difference.
We do make a difference. We can't fix it. We don't make
by
the biggest
some miracle, we do get to carbon net zero by 2050, probably largely bankrupting ourselves in the effort. I don't think we will get there. But if we were to, the impact on global emissions is barely a rounding error.
It's not
barely
nothing.
a rounding error.
But also, all I'm saying is
tiny.
I'm asking for a little bit less hyperbole and a little bit more accuracy. It's not nothing.
We are about 1% of global emissions.
Yeah, absolutely. 1% is better than nothing. Would you like to be 1% richer? Yes, I would.
If you flip your fingers and wipe that out, the impact on global temperatures is so tiny as not to be measured.
But the taxes will go up and the control will go up.
More people will die because of being impoverished.
Can I just say, I can't help but wonder, seriously, when I look at Sadiq Khan, I do not see a man who is kept awake at night by the unrelenting stabathon that is taking place in the capital. He's not the only mayor that is going through this. There are parts of the West Midlands, there are parts of Greater Manchester, as we all know, you know, Liverpool, goodness gracious me, parts of Scotland, where, you know, knife crime, etc., is out of control.
He makes no effort.
But Sadiq Khan almost laughs at it.
Yeah.
And I wonder if he's doing a bit of laughing now. I'm going to fly to the... I mean, I thought this headline was a joke when I first read it.
He knows
Sadiq Khan goes to meet the Pope to talk about ULEZ. I mean, it sounds like a
Patrick,
joke,
about ULEZ, there's also data now from many outer London boroughs that the air quality is worse since the expansion. So I'd like to see what Sadiq Khan says on that.
There's a lot of low traffic neighbourhoods rather than ULEZ, but I agree, it hasn't been well handled and it hasn't done well. No one thinks Sadiq's doing a good job.
Yeah, well, look, this is what Sadiq Khan has said. I am truly honoured to have been invited to participate in this key summit hosted by His Holiness Pope Francis, bringing together leading political, civic and religious leaders to tackle the biggest global threat we face today. I'm determined for London to continue to be a world leader in tackling the twin dangers of air pollution and the climate emergency, but the need for coordinated global action has never been so urgent. As mayor of one of the most diverse cities in the world, where we celebrate the huge contributions of different religious communities, it will also be an honour to discuss how faith and cooperation between different faiths can be a force for so much good. Brilliant. OK, all right. It's just easier, isn't it? It's easier for people to go and meet the Pope and shake his hand and talk about climate change than it is to actually sort out any of the problems on your own doorstep. But still to come, are the government doing the right thing for young kids by banning the teaching of gender ideology in schools? And in a TV exclusive, I speak to Sasha Bailey, who's the son of famed photographer David Bailey, who was going to become a trans woman until he made a last-minute U-turn. It's a fascinating story. I look forward to talking to him. But up next, knife crime is out of control. We were hearing a bit about that. And the Tories are calling for more stop and search, a bit like this, where a machete was found. But why do politicians have to ask the police to do more stop and search? Seriously, is it because the police are too afraid of being called racist? Former top cops Norman Brennan and Leroy Logan go head-to-head, and it's right after this.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The King was out and about yesterday and he said he's feeling much better as he returned to public duties for the first time since he himself was diagnosed with cancer.
Yes, he went on a visit with his wife, the Queen, to a Macmillan Cancer Centre in London, and he held hands with cancer patients whilst he was there.
So let's speak to royal commentator Jenny Bond with her thoughts on all of this. I thought he looked quite strong, all things considered, Jenny.
I thought so too. A little paler, perhaps, than usual, because he has quite a ruddy complexion. But all in all, looking very well. And I think Isabel is right to point out the hand. It wasn't just a handshake; it was a hand clasp. It was real, genuine, holding people's hands, empathising with them. You could see that in all his body language and his face. And I think this was probably, I think it was probably quite cathartic for him. And obviously for the patients he met there, but to meet people who are going through this trauma, this mental trauma as well as physical trauma, and truly empathise with them, I think must have been uplifting all round.
We saw the footage of him with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak soon after we all learnt of his diagnosis, when he said that he was overcome with emotion reading the letters that he'd been receiving from members of the public. And you got that sense yesterday, didn't you, that he really feels this deeply, not only because of his own diagnosis, but, of course, as we know, because of his daughter-in-law's as well.
Yeah. And I think he was incredibly keen to thank people as personally as he could. He lingered on the steps as they went in longer than usual, and there was a much bigger press party than normally would be at an occasion like that. He knew this was a significant, important occasion. And I think that getting back to work is the best thing he can do.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. Now, coming up, as the government bans teaching on gender ideology in schools, I'm joined by someone who made a last-minute decision not to become trans, OK? It's a fascinating story. But first, are British police too afraid of being called racist? It's time for tonight's head-to-head. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the government are now piling pressure on the police to ramp up this so-called controversial stop-and-search practice, saying that the priority should be tackling Britain's knife crime epidemic rather than attempting to appease campaigners who claim that it's discriminatory. Critics say that black people are disproportionately targeted, and the latest government figures show that they were 5 times more likely to be stopped and searched than white people. But there are countless examples of knife crime in Britain spiralling out of control in recent weeks. The shocking samurai sword attack in East London 2 weeks ago that left a 14-year-old schoolboy dead. The teenager jailed in Greater Manchester last week for stabbing Paul Marsh to death with a zombie knife. The 2 men jailed for life in Birmingham after they stabbed a 23-year-old footballer to death on a nightclub dance floor. And when the police do use their stop-and-search powers, this is what they can find. So there's a little clip here of them pinning someone down at a tube station, and you think, oh, grief. And you can see in the hand there a massive, massive, great big sword. Look at the size of that, just walking around the streets with it. That's so common. That is so common. So tonight I am asking, as the Conservatives are now feeling forced to tell our actual police force to bring back stop and search, to keep knives off the streets, are the police too afraid of being called racist to actually do it? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/yoursay or tweet me at gbnews. While you're there, make sure you go and vote in our poll. The results will follow shortly. But now, going head-to-head on this. Former police officer Norman Brennan and retired superintendent and author Leroy Logan. Chaps, thank you very much. Great to have you both on the show here now. Look, Leroy, I'll start with you. Do you think that the police are too afraid of being called racist to actually do proper stop and search in full force, do you think?
Well, I hear officers being, quoted as being, pensive and don't want to be called racist by using their powers. But that's nothing new. That was going on from when I was in the job, as far back as the 80s, that police officers are racist. I think everyone recognises the importance of stop and search. It is a good tool, but the importance of it is it has to be sharpened up by good intelligence, and the intelligence comes from the community. The more intelligence you have, the more you can target the people who are carrying the knives, other weapons and drugs, etc. But if you're alienating people by having a stop and search that's not based on intelligence and you don't have reasonable grounds, they're not going to work with you. It has to be a partnership. And for years, the stop and search that's been carried out nationally, as well as in the Met, has shown less than 5% of stop and search actually reveals a knife. They'll show you all sorts of, I've seen a whole brief on this thing today, but they don't show the actual percentage of stop and search, which actually is a positive. Most stop and searches actually uncover drugs, not weapons. And then the other thing is, you have to have the intelligence to know where these youngsters are keeping the knives, whether it's stashed in a lift shaft or anywhere in trees.
I get that. I'll come back to you, Leroy. I'll come back to you, mate, if that's all right. Because I just want to bring Norman in for now. Norman, you know, I absolutely hear what Leroy is saying there. There will be people shouting at their TV screens now, saying, "Look, just stop and search. Just stop and search, people. If you've not got anything on you, it doesn't matter. You've been inconvenienced for a bit of your day. The main point is that people are being stabbed, you know, in record numbers, etc. You know, should there be any qualms whatsoever about racial profiling when it comes to stop and search, Norman?
It's not a point of racial profiling. What it is, it's police officers working on the back of statistics. And if the statistics state that 60 or 70% of street murders, robberies, muggings and attacks are committed by young black boys or young black men, Leroy may say that's disproportionate. The police will say it is proportionate. You don't go out and stop 50% white people, 50% black people.
Yes, they do in Leeds.
Just to keep the...
Yes,
Leroy,
they do in Glasgow.
Leroy, you've had your say. Leroy...
No, but they're doing Leeds and they're doing Glasgow. And it's white people they stop.
Well, OK, Leroy, I will bring you back in. Let Norman finish and I will come back to you, Leroy.
But it's quoting wrong figures.
Leroy, you've got to show some respect, my friend. You're not the only voice in Britain that you think is important. There's others that want to listen to an alternative view.
I'm just correcting you, Norman.
Patrick.
All right,
well, we do have to do one at a time, chaps. So go on, Norman. All right, and then yeah.
Right. Let me put the statistics straight away. In the last 5 years, 138,000 weapons, mainly knives, have been seized off the streets of Britain, predominantly London. And let me blow that myth out the water. 300,000 people have been arrested as a result of stop and search. Now just think of how many murders have probably been prevented, how many stabbings have probably been prevented. We don't know, but that's how important the tool is. What is important, Patrick, as well, is that the police are telling me, especially in the Met, and I represent quite a few of them, not interested in stop and search. If I need to do it, I'll only do it if I have to. I don't want to get a complaint. Right. I don't want to have my bosses fail me. I don't want the courts to fail me. And the mayor and Theresa May, they're the two people that warned, and the mayor even threatened to take the Met to court to stop and search.
All right, OK. Again, Norman, I'll come back to you. Leroy, look, is it fair to say that, unfortunately, stabbings, violent crime, drug dealing, etc., appears to be disproportionately affecting ethnic minority communities, certainly in London, maybe around the UK? Is that unfair to say? Is that untrue?
I know there's certain factors behind all sorts of crime, and it's not just on colour. It is around education, it's around deprivation, poverty, mental health. A lot of these knife crimes is around mental health. The young man that was killed in Hainault, Daniel Angerin, was killed by a white male who must be deranged. And if you look on all these social media, mysticism and all sorts of things. So that's one of the things we need to recognise. This is not just an enforcement issue. You can't stop and search your way out of this problem or arrest your way out of this problem. It has to be identifying these key people who are vulnerable to this thug life and glamorizing of weapons, and also education is the key. There's a combination between education and enforcement. I hear all the time about hundreds of people being arrested, but just like in Leeds, it's mainly white people are stabbing white people. In Glasgow, it's white people stabbing white people. So it's just take the colour out of it and use it in an intelligence-based way.
All right, OK. Norman, come back to that then.
Right, let's cut to the chase. You have to bring colour into it when it comes to London, because young black children and young black youths are killing each other. My colleagues, certainly family liaison officers, are at mortuaries with black families. They are pleading, they're bereft, they want the police to do something about it. Some people in the black community complain. Well, I can tell you that these mothers and fathers who also live in the black community complain that their children are being murdered and they're planning funerals rather than futures. The time has come for the black community, certainly some within the black community, to look within, to take some responsibility and start getting their act together rather than blaming the police and anyone else for issues that they are partly responsible for. Because stop and search, I'm afraid, Patrick, will be reduced. It's reduced 44% in the past year or so. 44%. And my colleagues are telling me they're not going to be stopping and searching. And when you think that 3 years ago, we had the highest number of child homicide in London on record, 27 of those were stabbed. Almost every single one was a young black youth. So those that criticise the police on stop and search are basically saying to the police, stop and searching us, because you won't stop children killing each other.
All right, final word, Leroy, go on.
People are not saying don't use stop and search. They're only saying use it intelligence-based, not on a fishing expedition, not using sort of road traffic stops and then hiding the stop and searches as various reviews show. They want to work in partnership with you, and I am in the black community. And I don't need any lectures to you to say we don't recognise that these youngsters are dying. We understand it, and we are working as much as possible with the police. But they want to see it's being carried out without fear or favour, in an objective manner, in partnership with the police. And it's a combination of education and enforcement.
Work off the back of statistics. And if the statistics state that young black men are killing each other and robbing each other on the streets, it's not the colour, it's the crime that the police...
OK, all right, we've had it. That's a proper head-to-head. All right, guys, we'll draw... Can I thank you both very much for that? Good discussion, robust discussion, much appreciated. So that's former police officer Norman Brennan and retired superintendent and author Leroy Logan. Look, hey, who do you agree with on this? Are the police too afraid of being called racist to carry out stop and search? Either way, by the way, I cannot believe that it takes a government to have to encourage a police force to go and do stop and search in the middle of a knife crime epidemic. Anyway, Clive on X says, how many voting yes have spoken to a policeman about this, or have you just read it in the Daily Mail? Blue on X says they're just afraid, period. If a particular group are offending them, then it stands to reason that they will attract more attention. It used to be a regular occurrence in Northern Ireland to be stopped and searched. Good point, this. I was a member of the security forces, and it even happened to me when I was off duty. Oscar says, who cares? Their job isn't to be sensitive and constantly appease criminals. Their job is to uphold law and order, soft, ineffective, passive, completely incapable of handling any group perceived as a victim. Right, your verdict is in. Good grief. 97% of you agree that the police are too afraid of being called racist, while 3% of you say they aren't. Wow. Still to come. Rishi Sunak's Tough Guy Act proves to be false after it emerges that Britain did take back 50 illegal migrants from Ireland. I mean, honestly, does he think we're all blind? I'll take Lee Anderson to task, though, shortly on what reform would do differently. But before that, as the government bans teaching gender identity in schools, I have a real-life case study about the dangers of extreme trans ideology. Sasha Bailey joins me. He's the son of photographer David Bailey, world famous. He was convinced that he wanted to be a trans woman. But next, in a TV exclusive, he tells all of us, why he's made a life-changing U-turn. Stay tuned for that.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Sunny spells for many tomorrow, but there will be some heavy showers across the south. Yet again, northern Scotland may well see the highest temperatures. Low pressure dominating down to the southwest, and this weather front's provided a thicker zone of cloud across central areas. That rain from that weather front, though, is tending to peter out, as are the heavier showers we saw earlier. Just a bit of rain just returning to parts of the east coast as we go through the night. For many, it'll be a dry night, quite murky and misty on the eastern coast, and some fog is possible across parts of the south as temperatures generally drop to about 10 to 12 Celsius. Any mist and fog in the south should be clearing away, so generally out of the way by the time we get to the morning rush hour. But quite a lot of cloud across East Anglia and parts of the southeast, where there may well be one or two showers, some of that rain feeding into Lincolnshire as well. Generally a fine start for Wales, most of Northern Ireland as well, and a good part of Scotland. Again, dry and fine with sunny spells. The breeze coming in from the North Sea, so the east coast will be chilly. But again, northern Scotland in the sunshine, we'll see those temperatures really jumping up through the course of the day. It's going to stay fairly dull and cool, though, in northeast England. Some outbreaks of rain here, and we'll see a bit more rain coming into East Anglia, Lincolnshire, then across the Midlands during the afternoon. The potential for some quite heavy showers breaking out across the Midlands, southern England and South Wales. Some torrential downpours are possible. In the brighter spells in the south, 20 degrees, but the highest temperature is likely to be across parts of Scotland in the northwest. 23, 24 is possible. Cooler on the North Sea coast with that breeze coming in, which is still around on Friday. Again, turning things misty at times. Again, on Friday, we'll watch the showers developing across parts of England and Wales especially. Again, some heavy ones are possible, but they'll be very hit and miss. A good part of the day will be dry and bright, and in the sunny spells, it'll feel pretty warm once more. Bye for now.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, coming up, Lee Anderson on the shocking revelation that we did take back 50 illegal migrants from Ireland, despite what our Prime Minister said. But first, gender guidance, set to be published tomorrow, will ban schools from teaching kids under the age of 9 years old about sex education and controversial gender ideology. Well, it's that kind of teaching that I think can have a potentially life-changing impact on vulnerable people. Well, as Sasha Bailey, the son of world-renowned fashion photographer David Bailey, knows very, very well, that he was a model turned successful art curator living in Japan with his glamorous lawyer wife. But in 2022, that all came crashing down. Now, Sasha fled the couple's Tokyo home and returned to London, armed with his makeup bag, a few dresses and a month's supply of hormone replacement therapy, apparently, all part of his plan to start a new life by transitioning to become a woman. A complex mixture of reasons has led Sasha to this decision, but he found it relatively easy to follow through with that plan because a Japanese clinic had signed him up for gender reassignment within 10 minutes, reportedly. But once back in London, a long NHS waiting list and a new relationship gave him the chance to rethink his decision. So, for a TV exclusive interview, I'm very pleased to say I'm joined now by Sasha Bailey himself. Sasha, look, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate you coming on and telling us your story. Are we making it too easy, do you think, for people who are maybe a bit vulnerable to go ahead with gender transitioning? What do you think?
Yeah, I think one of the major issues that we're facing is that people are pushed down this route far too quickly without looking at the external factors. So we have a major problem with we look at this thing as from the aesthetic angle. We look at this as, this is what you want to be, this is why you want to be on the outside. You want to change yourself, almost like you want to fit into a round peg into a square hole. You want to be something to solve the problem that's around you from your environment. So you may be in an environment that's very bad for you. You may be, like I was, in an environment where it's abusive. And in order to solve that, you need to be able to change yourself.
OK, and do you think, then, that this is a potentially very big problem in society? I mean, why do you think that this is affecting a lot of men at the moment?
I think this is only going to grow, and I think the situation I was in where, I had my masculinity challenged on a daily basis is something that we see kind of growing in society in general for men. The problem, I think, is that men, especially young men right now, growing up, they're told as a basis, especially if you're Western, that you are evil, you are wrong as growing up. You have something wrong with you. All of our thinkers, all of the people who think as men are vilified. You just have to look at what happened to Jordan Peterson. And as that's a problem that grows, I think that, well, I can either be, a cis white male, or I can baptize myself in this kind of cult of gender ideology, and I can get a new label, or I can become something different. And that gives me the opportunity to cast off all of the sins of my father, all of the sins of the generations before, and fit into this society in a way that's new and fresh. And I think that this is something that's only going to grow. I think it's only going to grow massively as we kind of continue to vilify, well, masculinity in all its forms.
And presumably there was a period of time where you thought that making that transition would have solved everything and made you very happy.
Yeah.
What, in reality, do you think that would have done, a couple of years down the line?
I think a couple of years down the line, we would be sitting here and I'd be a person who had detransitioned. I would have lost my fertility. I would have lost so many things that would have made me a man. And we'd be sitting here having a very different conversation about regret. We'd be sitting here having a conversation about how all of these things were taken away from me, how the doctors didn't tell me, weren't honest with me about what had happened, weren't honest with me about the loss that I would have encountered. These things that we're talking about, we hand them over in society so often to those with kind of the lowest morals. We hand over the only way to speak about this stuff without being cancelled, without having everything taken away from you, is to be someone who exists outside the paradigm of, a standard job, outside the paradigm of all of that stuff. I mean, I'm sitting here as a person who is very lucky in a sense that I can speak about this stuff because I've had everything ripped away from me. I have nothing to lose. So I think it's so important that more and more people do stand up and talk about this. More and more people do provide these kind of incentive structures for people to be able to see a way of improving oneself as a man. Whereas the only ways that we're being offered to do that right now is either, joining this cult, changing everything about yourself, or joining another kind of paradigm which is all about extreme levels of toxic masculinity, to almost caricature levels, which is what we see with kind of Andrew Tate.
OK. So what would your message to people be now who are, globally millions, but presumably in the UK, hundreds of thousands, certainly tens of thousands of people, who are where you were a couple of years ago, who are, I think, being spoon-fed a lot of things to essentially look in the mirror and hate what they see, right? And hate what, like you mentioned there, the sins of the father, which have nothing to do with them, really. What would your message be to those people?
That you're not guilty. You're not guilty for what's come before you, and no one is. No one is guilty for what's happened generations before you. Generations before you are completely irrelevant to who you are now. I mean, we only have to look at the demographics of Occupy Wall Street to know that that's true. We know that it is not the case that, Western young men are benefiting from the fathers from all of our people before us. We're just as subjected, we're just as, we're suffering, and then we're also suffering the lashes of it. And I think that what I experienced with the relationship I was in is kind of a micro version of that. The macro version is society as a whole. What's the aspiration? Who can you aspire to as a young man? There is not many people out there that you're allowed to look at and say, this is a good man. Anyone who is, or anyone who preaches these values, is generally cancelled, vilified, and taken out of society.
Yeah, well, good for you for coming on and sticking your head above the parapet. The other thing as well I would just like you to emphasise, if you want to, is it's all very well and good making drastic physical changes, and I think from what I can gather you will find a ready supply of medical professionals who are more than willing to do that for you, just like that. But is the issue actually within? Is that what the issue is? And is that what needs fixing, and not, going through drastic physical changes for a lot of people, do you think?
No, I think that, well, we've been taught this from growing up, right? That it doesn't matter what's on the outside. We're taught all this body positivity stuff, and then the kind of ridiculousness is that there's all this body positivity stuff going on, but on the other side, we're told that change yourself completely physically and you will be the perfect thing. You will be exactly what we want. Then we will celebrate you. We'll write articles about you. We'll give you all of these things in society if you just change yourself completely. And you can switch this kind of original sin, if it were, from being born wrong. You can switch it for a version of yourself where you can succeed, you can be good.
Yeah, look, Sasha, thank you very, very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you and to get to know you. And I'm absolutely certain that we'd have you back on the show, and we'd love to, follow you up, follow your story. And I know that you've got a lot of good work planned. So thank you very, very much. And yeah, let us know what you think of all of that. Of course, get in touch. It's gbnews.com/your say. Still to come. You have just heard Sasha's story. Soon, I'm going to have a debate with my panel about whether or not the government has gone far enough in ridding our schools of some gender madness. But next, remember when the Prime Minister said this?
Can confirm that the United Kingdom has no legal obligation to accept returns of illegal migrants from Ireland.
Well, it turns out that just a few months ago, we did actually take 50 illegal migrants back from Ireland to British shores. Lee Anderson is furious, and he joins me live, and he joins me next.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Well, joining me now to discuss it is the royal biographer, Angela Levin. Angela, welcome to the show. Hope you're having a cracking bank holiday. So it's been a year not without its challenges. A lot of health issues, of course, in the family. And yet, Angela, the royal family have come out of this more popular than ever with the British public.
Yeah, I think people have seen what King Charles is really like. He's not putting on any type of coverage to himself. He's been very open, extraordinarily open. When he went on his first visit since he was described with having cancer, he said to people, first of all, it was a bit of a shock, wasn't it, when they tell you what you've got. And that's really, you don't imagine that a queen or a king would say that. It's usually kept inside them. And he's then had the most amazing gentleness and warmth with the people that he talked to. One woman, he took her hand when he was just finishing the conversation and held it very tight and looked at her saying, come on, you can do it. It was extremely moving. And the other thing is that he dropped some of the sort of things that his mother would not have appreciated. And one of them was that there were two young children, about 6 and 8, outside, and they had flowers. One of them gave it to Queen Camilla, one gave it to him. And then he said, oh, well, thank you very much for your flowers. I've got a present for you too. Out came a big bag full of goodies, and he gave it to the children. And I thought that was a lovely touch, actually, something that they would probably keep forever. I don't know if it was just sweets. Knowing King Charles, it was probably something much grander than that.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight on GB News. And despite the Prime Minister's tough talk, it's emerged today that Britain took back 50 illegal migrants from Ireland when the Irish police and UK immigration enforcement team stopped buses travelling from Belfast to Dublin in October last year, and then again in February. Right, so that was just months before Rishi Sunak refused to accept the return of asylum seekers from Ireland after the EU country complained that migrants were flooding into the country to avoid the Rwanda deportations.
Can confirm that the United Kingdom has no legal obligation to accept returns of illegal migrants from Ireland. Now, it's no surprise that our robust approach to illegal migration is providing a deterrent, but the answer is not sending police to villages in Donegal.
Yeah, all right, why did you do it then? Well, a Home Office spokesperson has said these people were stopped on their journey into Ireland. The UK and Ireland are both able to stop people entering their respective countries if they believe the traveller is abusing the common travel area, as happened in this case. As the Prime Minister said, we have no plans for a returns agreement with Ireland for asylum seekers. I'm joined now by Reform UK MP Lee Anderson. Lee, would you take migrants back from Ireland?
Absolutely not, Patrick. I mean, this is another example of a weak government who's is not prepared to sort out the illegal migration crisis. You know, we've got thousands coming over the channel every single week now from France. It's going to get worse and worse. We have a Prime Minister and a government saying that, you know, we will not accept returns from Ireland. We're already doing that. This is spineless, this is weak, and this is going against the will of the British people, Patrick.
But Lee, I mean, the government's chief migration advisor has said that actually Rishi Sunak has a fighting chance of reducing migration to below 250,000 by the next election. So I suppose, as far as Rishi Sunak's concerned, you know, what's 50 illegal migrants from Ireland?
Well, listen, I mean, the public are absolutely fed up, Patrick, of hearing this nonsense on an almost daily basis. You know, we've got net migration, we've got legal migration going through the roof. We've got illegal migration now 40% up on what it was last year. You know, we hear the government piping on all the time that we're going to reduce the amount of crossings over the channel. It's actually going up, Patrick. You know, it's no deterrent whatsoever. You know, I think they've run out of ideas. And like I said, Patrick, from time and time again, I get fed up to the back teeth of hearing my own voice on this. The British public are fed up with this. Our first duty as a nation should be to protect our borders, and we cannot against these pathetic, evil people smugglers.
I mean, they are doing some stuff, though, like, for example, banning the foreign students from bringing their family members over to the UK. That does appear to be working. And I suppose it does appear, Lee, that the Prime Minister does have a plan.
Well, it does, Pat. I mean, that is working, and that will work, and that will bring legal net migration down. We know that. But, you know, the Prime Minister and the government, Patrick, have had their hand forced on this. You know that, and GB News viewers know that, absolutely know, 100%. Over the past few years, we've sort of the government's turned a blind eye to legal migration. It's only through the pressure to the backbenchers, to the right of the party, this problem now is being sorted.
Absolutely. And I think the idea as well of seeing, you know, us stood next to the Irish Home Secretary, whoever he was, and we were grandstanding saying we're not going to do any deals with you, and it turns out we'd actually, well, we'd just let him in anyway. But anyway, look, shocking new data from the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, Lee, has found that 1 in 5 young Brits doesn't know the significance of D-Day ahead of the 80th anniversary of the Normandy landings next month. So GB News' reporter Jeff Moody did actually go out to Barnstaple today. He found a couple of Gen Zers, and they are, well, they're just really ignorant.
I should know this, I'm a history student, but no, I don't. I don't really know. I know what it is a little bit. I'm pretty sure it's when you celebrate all the war stuff.
I know it's very important. I remember that much about it. But is it something to do with the war? Or...
Yeah, all right, Lee. What do you make of those responses then? And what should we do about it as well, people not knowing enough about D-Day?
Well, look, listen, Patrick, don't blame the Gen Zers on this. This is, you know, when I was at school, we had a link, if you like, to our past, our history of the Second World War. You know, some of our teachers actually fought in the Second World War. You know, my grandparents, my granddad, he'd been across North Africa and Italy. So we had that as a generation. We had that direct link to our past. And you know what? I think the schools have got to take some responsibility on this, Patrick. Our head teachers, our teachers, they should be getting veterans into school, our armed forces into school to teach our young people. Some of these schools, Patrick, by the way, they're more interested in dragging drag queens into school, dressed in ridiculous outfits and blonde wigs to read our kids silly stories, rather than get some real people.
Some of our schools, Lee, would be more inclined to get a Palestinian freedom fighter in, wouldn't they, than someone who's actually, you know, fought in the war or was a Falklands hero. I mean, that's where we're at, I think.
Well, the word, Patrick, absolutely right. So, you know, don't blame our young people in this country. They will only learn what they're taught, and it's incumbent on our teachers and society as a whole to make sure that our young people learn our history, especially from an important, you know, from the Second World War.
Yeah, absolutely, Lee. I couldn't agree more. Look, thank you very much, mate. Take care, and I will see you again very, very soon. That's Lee Anderson there. Look, coming up, I've got an exclusive that will send shivers down your spine about the chronic overcrowding in prisons and some of the monsters we're letting out. But next, it's time teachers stop telling 9-year-olds about sex. Why don't they leave our kids alone? And can I also just say, do you not think it's a little bit weird that so many people in the education sector seem absolutely desperate to talk to kids about sex. This is Patrick Christys Tonight. We are only on GB News, and right now is your weather with Alex Deakin.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Sunny spells for many tomorrow, but there will be some heavy showers across the south. Yet again, northern Scotland may well see the highest temperatures. Low pressure dominating down to the southwest, and this weather front's provided a thicker zone of cloud across central areas. That rain from that weather front, though, is tending to peter out, as are the heavier showers we saw earlier. Just a bit of rain just returning to parts of the east coast as we go through the night. For many, it'll be a dry night, quite murky and misty on the eastern coast, and some fog is possible across parts of the south as temperatures generally drop to about 10 to 12 Celsius. Any mist and fog in the south should be clearing away, so generally out of the way by the time we get to the morning rush hour. But quite a lot of cloud across East Anglia and parts of the southeast, where there may well be one or two showers, some of that rain feeding into Lincolnshire as well. Generally a fine start for Wales, most of Northern Ireland as well, and a good part of Scotland. Again, dry and fine with sunny spells. The breeze coming in from the North Sea, so the east coast will be chilly. But again, northern Scotland in the sunshine, we'll see those temperatures really jumping up through the course of the day. It's going to stay fairly dull and cool, though, in northeast England. Some outbreaks of rain here, and we'll see a bit more rain coming into East Anglia, Lincolnshire, then across the Midlands during the afternoon. The potential for some quite heavy showers breaking out across the Midlands, southern England and South Wales. Some torrential downpours are possible. In the brighter spells in the south, 20 degrees, but the highest temperature is likely to be across parts of Scotland. In the northwest, 23, 24 is possible. Cooler on the North Sea coast with that breeze coming in, which is still around on Friday. Again, turning things misty at times. Again, on Friday, we'll watch the showers developing across parts of England and Wales especially. Again, some heavy ones are possible, but they'll be very hit and miss. A good part of the day will be dry and bright, and in the sunny spells, it'll feel pretty warm once more. Bye for now.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing. Just go for it. It's an absolute must. You must try and go for it.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight. Stop teaching 9-year-old kids about sex in schools. Also,
no one should be put on this scheme if they are a threat to the public. And let me be crystal clear, it does not apply let me be absolutely clear. It does not apply to anyone serving a life sentence.
Well, a GB News exclusive can reveal that executioners are being released from prison early. And
I haven't even got anything on my lanyard. I'm just wearing it to wind up the Minister for Common Sense.
Labour on the lanyard wind-up, but
Must be the only tech brother on the continent.
Keir Starmer is an absolute shocker at PMQs. On my panel this evening, it is the Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. We've got landlord Adam Brooks and author Rebecca Reid. Yes, and has Britain gone to the dogs? I'll reveal it all very shortly. Sex-crazed teachers need to leave the kids alone. Next.
Patrick, thank you and good evening. The top stories this hour. Slovakia's Prime Minister is in a critical condition and still undergoing surgery after he was shot following a government meeting in Handlover, outside of the capital Bratislava. Officials could be seen bundling Robert Fico into a car shortly after the attacker shot him 5 times in the assassination attempt. Mr Fico was airlifted to hospital as a result, and 1 man has so far been detained by authorities. Mr Fico won power for a 4th time in October and has implemented more pro-Russian policies. He's pledged to stop military support for Ukraine and threatened to veto the country's membership in NATO. Slovakia's Interior Minister says the country believed the attacker had political motivation. New proposals could see schools in England banned from teaching students about gender identity. The government's review would also see all sex education halted for children under the age of 9. The Prime Minister ordered the review last year amid concerns some children were being exposed to inappropriate content. Reports suggest parents will be provided samples of sex education content before lessons take place. Police could make more use of existing stop and search powers as part of new measures to tackle knife crime. The searches were curbed a decade ago by the then Home Secretary Theresa May after it was found minorities were being disproportionately targeted. £3.5 million will be invested into developing new technology, which could help police detect suspects carrying knives by scanning them from a distance. A red notice search warrant for an escaped French prisoner has been issued by Interpol. 30-year-old Mohamed Amra, also known as The Fly, escaped from a prison van in northern France yesterday, sparking a major manhunt. He was broken free by gunmen in an ambush that killed 2 prison guards. Now, if you've ever found yourself stuck on hold, how about waiting 800 years? That is how long people in Britain spent waiting to talk to the taxman last year. A damning report from the government's spending watchdog found taxpayers were on hold to HMRC for around 7 million hours in that tax year. It was less than half that time before the COVID pandemic. Fewer calls are now being answered, and those who do manage to get through spend longer on the phone amid what's being called a declining spiral of customer service. And some good news for fans of the comedy Legally Blonde. It is returning to screens in the form of a prequel series. The character portrayed by Reese Witherspoon will be bending and snapping her way back to the small screen in a series titled Elle. With its clever critique of the dumb blonde stereotype, the original film became an instant classic when it premiered in 2001. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Patrick.
Anybody who wants to teach children under the age of 9 years old about sex needs to have their hard drive checked. Schools in England will be banned from teaching sex education to children under 9 in new government guidance expected to be published tomorrow. Good. Why on earth did teachers even want to do that in the first place? Schools will also be banned from teaching kids under 9 about gender identity. Now, I'm sorry, but in my view, there are a lot of people out there who are absolutely desperate to sexualise kids. And they want to use the banner of LGBTQ+IA, whatever, the rainbow flag, happy, clappy inclusivity, in order to be able to do that. Why are teaching unions desperate to have conversations with your child about their private parts? Do you not think that's a bit weird? There are numerous cases of sexuality being forced onto children. A Christian mother took one primary school to court after her four-year-old was forced to take part in a gay pride parade. In Hull, parents pulled their child out of a nursery because their young child was shown a book that included a grandfather dressed in BDSM gear with a spiked dog collar and everything. It's not just schools, though. A local library came up with the idea of encouraging children to read by hiring, and apologies in advance for this, Rainbow Dildo Butt Monkey to perform for young kids. Now, if you don't believe me, here is the offending creature. They hired that to come and talk to young children about books. Yeah, why? Seriously, why? We've had primary school teachers ignore government guidance that parents should be informed if their child starts saying that they want to change gender. One school trust, which comprises several Church of England primary schools, has advised teachers to help young girls use breast binders when out on school trips and let students sleep in bedrooms matching their chosen gender identity. You've got resources like this available online. Teach children about pride in an early years setting. They can do rainbow finger paintings. Why? Why is it important to talk to 4- or 5-year-olds about their sexuality? Now, I found the reaction to this from teaching unions quite baffling, OK? So this new desire for the government to just push back on this a little bit and say, whoa, 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 hold your horses, let's wait till the kids are a bit older. So Paul Whiteman is apparently the General Secretary at Schools Leaders Union, the NAHT, and he said, if what has been leaked is accurate, the government must provide the evidence which unequivocally shows that such age limits will improve the support, protection and safeguarding of children and young people. No, Paul. With respect, mate, I think you have to provide the evidence that people like you telling a 7-year-old about tampons, willies and 72 genders has some kind of benefit. It's not bigoted, homophobic, transphobic or outdated to think that children under the age of 9 should just be treated like children. But let's get their thoughts of my panel this evening. I've got the Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. I've got businessman and activist Adam Brooks. And I've got author Rebecca Reid. Mark, where are you on this? I mean, should children under the age of 9 be taught about all of this stuff?
Well, you say all of this stuff. I think there's quite a bit to parcel out here, Patrick. I'm broadly with you, and I'm broadly with Gillian Keegan. This guidance seems to me about sensible. I think there are some grey areas. I mean, there's a big difference between this monkey character with a sex toy attached to him and perhaps being willing to engage with an 8-year-old who says, where do babies come from? I mean, that's some form of sex education if you attempt to answer that question. So there are some shades of grey. What I'd like to happen there, and I'm not a parent myself, is parents to have a much bigger say. At the moment, kids seem to be taught what Gillian Keegan, however worthy a politician she might be, wants to teach kids, or the teaching unions. And if you've got kids at school, I think the parents should be able to dictate the curriculum much more strictly.
Some parents, particularly parents who are extremely religious, and that is a big problem with both Muslim and Christian parents particularly, will opt not to teach sex ed.
No, but that might not be within the parameters. I'm happy for the government to set broad parameters, right? So you can't decide that you want your kids to be brought up as white supremacists, but parents can have a say where they're sort of beginning to talk about sex education at 8, 10 or 12.
Adam, do you think it had gone too far in schools?
Far too far. I've got skin in the game here. I've got a 10-year-old daughter, you know, and she's 10, so she's over this age, but she doesn't need to know about sex, whether it's straight, bi, gay or trans. I'll be horrified if I found out that she was taught about this stuff at school. I'd pull her out of school. She doesn't need to know what a condom is or anything like that. She's a child, right? We are going too far in this country, and especially with the trans agenda. I mean, I've got multiple books here that are shown in schools.
Well, what are some of
in primary schools? I mean, there's one called ABC Pride. Okay, T is for trans.
Right.
And then next to that is a character with mastectomy scars. We are normalising cutting off body parts to primary school children. That is wrong. And I think there is a left-wing indoctrination going on by some teachers in this country.
OK, so I can absolutely see the idea of an 8-year-old walks up to a teacher and asks where babies come from and stuff like that.
You don't tell them.
Why would you not tell them, Adam? Is it because you want them to be victims of sexual abuse?
What, so,
because the
how ridiculous.
NSPCC has made it very clear on their website they are the experts in this country on preventing child abuse.
You do not tell an 8-year-old. You do not tell an 8-year-old the process of sex.
Let's let Rebecca speak and then we'll come back.
The number one thing you can do to protect a child from sexual abuse is to teach them the anatomically correct names for their private parts. So you don't say foo-foo, you say vulva. You don't say willy, you say penis. You teach children what their bodies are, what is acceptable, and what can and cannot happen.
Do they need to read books with trans scars?
I wouldn't read that book to my child, and that dildo butt monkey guy would not be somebody I'd have in front of my child. But I'm talking about the curriculum and teaching children the basics of sex is how you keep them safe from being rude.
So what age would you start that?
I talk to my child very, very, very basically about sex. I use anatomically correct parts, and I talk about egg, sperm from the beginning. Just it's part of life. Because if you make it weird and seedy,
you don't make it weird.
Strange.
My daughter is 10. Okay.
Adam, she's probably seen porn.
Oh, please do not say that. My daughter would not have seen porn. She's 10 years of age.
Statistics show
nonsense. She has not got. She has not got a smartphone. My daughter has not seen porn.
But it is true.
It's not true. That's ridiculous.
Children have seen porn on other children's phones. It's horrific, but it's true.
Ridiculous.
Okay, I think the point here is maybe as well though that if this had gone unchecked, the direction of travel in schools, I think, felt very concerning.
Completely.
I mean, I think it had gone a bit bonkers, actually.
Yeah, and again, this is why I underscore, say I'm not a parent myself. I want much more parental control. They shouldn't be able to dictate
How many genders are there?
Well, I think there are 2.
There is 2. Not 72.
But the examples were nurseries and libraries.
But the key thing here is surely there are shades of this, right? Yeah. I mean, you're going to explain, sexual intercourse in a different way to an 8-year-old and a 15-year-old. Yeah. You're not going to tell 8 or 10-year-old kids about sexual health, for example.
I would, personally.
But you're not expecting them to be sexually active. So there is a sort of, there's a spread here, the appropriate thing at different ages. And I want parents, you're a parent, right, Rebecca? Yes. Yeah, and you're a parent, Adam. I want the parents to be able to have a big say in this, and probably a bigger say than the teaching union.
The issue is that children talk to each other.
But that's
whoever knows the most in the playground tells everybody else.
Can I just come in at this point and say that is, I think, a big concern, which is that you have to, as much as we have to respect some parents' rights who want to have exactly the kind of conversations from an early age that you've had, Rebecca, if Adam did not want his children going to...
But my child will tell Adam's child.
Primary school. Well, maybe.
This is the issue.
Going to primary school, but also, and I use this example because unfortunately this is the example that there kind of is, so that one day Sandra from the geography department can have a word with Adam's child and say there might be 72 genders. I think you've got a right, Adam, to not want that.
Yeah. I would pull my kids out of school, and I think we keep hearing about this trans ideology and this agenda, and I go on about a lot because it's happening, and we've got left-wing lunatic teachers that are pushing this on our children. There's less than 1% of this population, of our population, are trans. Why suddenly is it always in schools? It's on adverts, on our magazines, it's in the media.
Well,
there's an agenda.
The sex ed that children were being given between the ages of 5 and 9 was a penis and a vagina and a sperm and an egg, which is very classic. Cisgendered oriented.
They're also being shown.
What we're fighting against is the biological sexual education.
So why are
4-year-olds
taking part in pride events at school?
Those aren't school. That was a library.
Well, arguably worse, nurseries or things like that.
But again, nursery, you opt in. It's a private system. It's not a state. So there's no curriculum.
Some of the parents are very surprised by that. They obviously work consultants.
But your nurseries are within control. The issue with schools is that it's a set curriculum, so you can't pick and choose. With a nursery or the library, you can then choose what you opt in and out. So it is a difference.
I think I want a bit more choice from the parents. Again, Adam says this about a range of things. I think it should be relatively easy for parents to pull their their kids from a school and go to another school. At the moment, that's extraordinarily difficult. You don't need millions of people to do it. You just need that pressure on an individual school.
Have the option to pull them out of those lessons.
But then you end up with
that
religious
has to be the
kids,
option.
and I particularly worry about Muslim kids because there is a real lobby from small communities.
I'm happy for the
Islamic
national
schools
curriculum to set the
often
broad
don't teach sex
boundaries. Right, so the national curriculum needs to set the broad boundaries, but at the moment it is unbelievably specific, and parents have very little power, and left-wing teachers' unions and politicians seem to have far too much power.
But this is honestly, I promise you, this is about protecting children. The reason I don't like talking about sex with my child, it's not a comfortable conversation. But the more you talk, the countries that have the lowest levels of paedophilia, abuse, and teen pregnancy and STIs are the countries in the Netherlands that have the earliest consistent sex education.
But that has to be a choice for the parents.
But
No disrespect.
parents don't.
No disrespect.
Adam just said he doesn't.
My daughter is 10. If she asks me where babies come from, my answer will be something like, something happens between
Mummy and
Daddy,
Adam,
and then down the line. Please stop saying that. She does not.
know.
Please stop saying that. It's giving me the right? Because we've got to protect their innocence. And
Knowing that
teaching them, teaching them too much in school, especially this trans agenda, they have no reason to know it. Why are these teachers pushing it on our children? It's very sinister and it's wrong, and I'm glad the government's stepping in.
Because they're trying to protect them sexually. There's nothing uninnocent about knowing about sex.
Rebecca, I'm sorry, I do think there is...
You think I need my hard drive checked because I tell my daughter what
No, but I think you're all right, right? I think you're all right.
Lots of us are.
Yeah, and I'm sure lots of you are as well, but there does appear to me to be a mad rush now to sexualise kids from a very early age, and I do have serious
drag queens in schools. Why do drag queens...
Drag queens are in libraries and theme
Drag
parks.
queens
They
have
are
read
not
stories in schools. I've printed things out.
Some of these books look pretty disturbing.
That's not a book I would necessarily choose to have.
That's what you choose to have. I'm not sure that should be in any school. Right? It's not just a question of what you choose to have.
The trans side of it,
I've got to ask.
I care because I want children to be protected.
Why do so many on the left defend this drag queens in schools, defend these books that show mutilation in the trans agenda? Why do so many on the left defend this?
Because we choose to educate our children rather than lie to them and rather than
that's absolute nonsense.
We tell them the reality of what is happening. We don't necessarily condone it.
But there is an age
I would not condone top surgery. I would admit that it exists.
We're going to have to move it on. We're going to have to move it on. Look, thank you very much. You know, good, proper, robust discussion right at the top of the hour. Coming up, an NHS trial scheme dubbed Game of Stones will pay fat men £400 to lose weight. But why the hell are we rewarding people just for getting into shape? We debate that, and I bring you the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. But next, Rishi Sunak promised today that violent criminals would not be free to walk our streets. But I've got a GBNews exclusive for you about a murderer that we've released early. Yep, make sure you stay tuned. It's Patrick Christys tonight on GB News. A big exclusive coming your way in a matter of moments.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christys tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
More than 21,000 asylum seekers have gone missing in Britain over the past 5 years. The real number, by the way, will be much, much higher. The fact is, they've legged it. They're on the run, and they're out committing goodness only knows what kind of crimes. But that's not the official line. Do you want to know what the official line is?
So do we now know what's happened to the remainders who have no legal basis on which to still be in the United Kingdom?
The Home Office, through our different mechanisms of tracing people, are continuing to seek to trace them.
So when people do disengage, and I think that's a more accurate word than gone missing, when people do disengage from us, we respond to that.
They've not disengaged, Mr. Cleverly. The vast majority of them had their claims rejected and then ran off because we're not deporting them quickly and they're not going to just sit there and wait for you to come and get them in a few years' time. If they don't turn up for an interview twice, they change their phone number, they don't fill in a questionnaire twice, they move address, or they change their lawyer without informing the Home Office. That's it. Is it any wonder, though, when you've got these civil service chuckle brothers running the show behind the scenes?
Put foreign offenders aside and Albanians aside, just forget about those numbers. How many people travelling on small boats that's been refused asylum have been sent to a third country or back to their own country over the past 3 years?
I don't think we have. I
think we'll write to the committee with those numbers, Mr. Anderson.
That's staggering. That's actually
staggering.
OK, then let's do it for the last year.
I don't have a number for non-Albanian, non-FNOs.
Perhaps they might be able to help you.
Let's do last week, then.
Do we have any figures about anything?
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, there was chaos at magistrates' courts across the country today as hundreds of hearings were postponed at the last minute due to prison overcrowding. So the delays follow the Ministry of Justice's decision to implement Operation Early Dawn, which means that defendants who are likely to be remanded into custody will have to remain in police cells until a prison place frees up, all right? So Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer today accused Rishi Sunak of wanting to issue get-out-of-jail-free cards to criminals.
Does the early release of stalkers, domestic abusers and those considered a risk to children sound like the work of someone who is making the country more secure?
Mr. Speaker, as I've said, no one should be put on this scheme if they are a threat to the public. And let me be crystal clear, it does not apply. Let me be absolutely clear, it does not apply to anyone serving a life sentence, anyone convicted of a serious violent offence, anyone convicted of terrorism, anyone convicted of a sex offence.
Can I just say, you know, a bit rich from Keir Starmer, isn't it, given some of the absolute wrong-uns that he's defended. He said he's had to do it, the cab rank rule, all of that stuff. But, you know, some absolute wrong-uns that Keir Starmer has given legal advice to over the years. But anyway, tough talk back from the Prime Minister. But a GB News investigation can reveal that violent criminals are actually being released from prison due to overcrowding. This is outside of Operation Early Dawn. We can exclusively reveal now that murderer Daniel White, who shot a millionaire's wife in the head while stealing her expensive Rolex, is already free and walking the streets. White was jailed for life over the brutal execution of Giuseppina Martinara in front of her husband back in the year 2000. But he has now been deemed safe for release by the parole board. His accomplice, Jason James, who snatched her £13,000 Rolex from her wrist as she lay dying outside her home, was sentenced to 5 life terms for the cold-blooded killing and robbery, but is currently going through a parole review as well. And crazed drug addict Stephen Soames-Wade, who mercilessly murdered security guard Christophe Duclos by pushing him in front of a train at an East London tube station in 2002, could also be free from jail in just weeks. So, has that made a complete mockery of Rishi Sunak's, tough talk at PMQs? Oh, all of these dangerous people, they won't be released due to overcrowding. Let me bring in now retired prison governor Vanessa Fraser. Vanessa, look, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. Thank you. Now, are we releasing some absolute dangerous wrong-uns due to overcrowding that otherwise, frankly, we would wish to keep in prison for the rest of their natural lives?
Well, I think there's a couple of things there, Patrick. Good evening, anyways. The first thing is the parole process is totally separate to the early release scheme. The early release scheme is for determinant sentences of less than 4 years. These three that you've quoted were all given life sentences with tariffs ranging from 20, 25 and 13 years. My understanding is that the first one you mentioned, Daniel White, was sentenced with a tariff of 20 years in 2000.
Yeah.
So he's gone over his tariff, so he hasn't been released early. The second one is going through it. He's coming up to 25 years, and that is a natural thing for a life sentence prisoner to go through. I'd be highly surprised if he managed to get parole unless he's been an absolute angel for the last 25 years, first time. And the other one only got a 13-year tariff. So, you know, he's clearly gone way over tariff as well, and still hasn't been released. So
yeah,
that's the second thing.
So Rishi Sunak is right. I mean, look, we've highlighted there just some really nasty pieces of work who have served long sentences, and many people will think should never see the light of day again. However, that's not really what this early release due to overcrowding thing is about. Presumably, that's more for prolific shoplifters or people who've got a lesser sentence. Is that still not dangerous to the public? I mean, what is the deterrent there for people who've gone on and commit even things like domestic abuse, right? And, you know, then they get 2 years and they get early release, and you think, well, they'll just do it again, won't they?
Well, I mean, who knows? It depends how committed they are to leading a life of no crime. But the early release scheme, I mean, it's clearly not working because they've gone from the 18 days early release to the 30-odd days release, and now from the 23rd of May, they're going to 70 days early release. And the worrying thing about that is that, first and foremost, it's very unfair to victims of crime who see somebody sentenced and expect them to do that sentence. The second thing is it's also unfair to the prisoner themselves because most of them won't be ready for release. They'll have resettlement issues, housing, and let's not forget, of course, it's the probation service that has to monitor these individuals.
Exactly. Could I just ask you about how bad overcrowding actually is in prisons?
I mean, it's massive. You know, we're in dire straits, the prison service, and I think that it's really worrying for members of the public to think that, you know, should we have a riots as we did in 2010? We've got nowhere to put these people.
Okay.
And, you know, we can't possibly get ourselves into a situation where our prisons are so full that we can't actually put people in prison, which is, you know, this is lack of foresight. This is sorting it after the horse has bolted. You know, this should have been sorted a long time ago. But I'd just like to say that, you know, Keir Starmer saying get out of jail free card. He forgets that in 2006, 2007, Jack Straw did exactly the same thing as when he was Home Secretary, and that lasted for 3 years because, again, the government doesn't see the prison service as a investable opportunity and just lets it go to rack and ruin. And we are where we are because of that, because of lack of investment.
OK. Vanessa, look, always great to chat. Thank you very, very much. Really enlightening stuff. You take care. I'll chat to you again very soon. Now, in relation to that release of Daniel White that we mentioned earlier on, a Ministry of Justice spokesperson has said this. The decision to release Daniel White was made by the Independent Parole Board after a thorough risk assessment. He will be on licence for the rest of his life and can be recalled to prison if he breaks the terms of his relief. And responding to the implementation of this Operation Early Dawn, a Ministry of Justice spokesman said, to manage this demand, we have brought on thousands of extra places at pace and will introduce strategic oversight, the transfer of remanded offenders from police custody to maintain the running of the justice system. This government is categorical that dangerous offenders should stay behind bars, which is why new laws will keep rapists locked up for every day of their prison sentence and ensure life means life for the most horrific murderers. Yeah, look, absolutely. And I do not have any time for Keir Starmer, by the way, saying how, you know, oh, Rishi Sunak's softer on justice than he actually was when he was in the legal game. However, we do need to build more prisons, don't we? Coming up, should the NHS be paying obese men £400 just to lose a bit of weight? Plus, the youth of today have no clue about the sacrifice our forefathers made.
I don't really know. I'm a history student, but no, I know what it is a little bit. I don't really know. I'm pretty sure it's when you celebrate.
OK, that was supposed to be some stuff about D-Day there. I'll play you the full clip very shortly. Right after we bring you the liveliest paper review you will get anywhere on telly. The front pages have just landed and they're coming your way in just a sec.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Sunny spells for many tomorrow, but there will be some heavy showers across the south. Yet again, northern Scotland may well see the highest temperatures. Low pressure dominating down to the southwest, and this weather front's provided a thicker zone of cloud across central areas. That rain from that weather front, though, is tending to peter out, as are the heavier showers we saw earlier. Just a bit of rain just returning to parts of the east coast as we go through the night. For many, it'll be a dry night, quite murky and misty on the eastern coast, and some fog is possible across parts of the south as temperatures generally drop to about 10 to 12 Celsius. Any mist and fog in the south should be clearing away, so generally out of the way by the time we get to the morning rush hour. But quite a lot of cloud across East Anglia and parts of the southeast, where there may well be one or two showers, some of that rain feeding into Lincolnshire as well. Generally a fine start for Wales, most of Northern Ireland as well, and a good part of Scotland. Again, dry and fine with sunny spells. The breeze coming in from the North Sea, so the east coast will be chilly. But again, northern Scotland in the sunshine, we'll see those temperatures really jumping up through the course of the day. It's going to stay fairly dull and cool, though, in northeast England. Some outbreaks of rain here, and we'll see a bit more rain coming into East Anglia, Lincolnshire, then across the Midlands during the afternoon. The potential for some quite heavy showers breaking out across the Midlands, southern England and South Wales. Some torrential downpours are possible. In the brighter spells in the south, 20 degrees, but the highest temperature is likely to be across parts of Scotland. In the northwest, 23, 24 is possible. Cooler on the North Sea coast with that breeze coming in, which is still around on Friday. Again, turning things misty at times. Again, on Friday, we'll watch the showers developing across parts of England and Wales especially. Again, some heavy ones are possible, but they'll be very hit and miss. A good part of the day will be dry and bright, and in the sunny spells, it'll feel pretty warm once more. Bye for now.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight, only on GB News. Now it's time to bring you the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Let's do it. Right, I'm going to start with the Daily Mail. Europe on edge after pro-Russian Slovak PM is gunned down. The Ukraine conflict is escalating. Fears that Putin will exploit the attack to destabilise the NATO nation. There's also a lot of unrest taking place in Georgia as well, it must be said. Let's go over to the Metro. UK team's prevention breakthrough. Blood test to give us 7-year notice of cancer. A simple blood test could detect cancer in people 7 years before symptoms show. I wonder, you know that kind of hypothetical question that people ask each other sometimes, like, oh, if you could find out how and when you were going to die, would you like to know? It does strike me that this is maybe actually becoming more of a reality. I'd want to know.
No, I wouldn't.
But you've been treated for this.
Yeah,
if you catch cancer early, you won't die of it.
Exactly.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Unless you've got really unlucky.
In the Matrix, on the blue pill, I like to know nothing. Just like blissful ignorance.
Just wait, let it wash over you. Right, moving on. The Guardian. Slovakian leader fighting for his life after assassination attempt. Yeah, as I'm sure a lot of you will have seen earlier on, Slovakia's populist Prime Minister, Robert Fico, is being treated for life-threatening injuries. As I understand it, he is still being treated for life-threatening injuries. The condition has not got worse or better. He was shot earlier on today. Let's go to the R. UK's toxic water. Illegal sewage, parasite in taps and higher bills on the way. So, Yeah, apparently some people are having to boil water now because there's supposedly, I don't want to like needlessly scaremonger here, but apparently there's a diarrhea-type parasite living in the taps. There's, you know, Windermere Beauty Spot in the Lake District is also, you know, millions of litres of raw sewage. That, can I just say, is an utter crime. You know, I used to live around that part of the world. Having raw sewage pumped into Windermere is ridiculous. Let's go over to the Mirror, though. Keir to Mirror readers. This is Keir Starmer. Our first steps to make Britain work again for working people. 1, deliver economic stability. 2, cut NHS waiting times. 3, launch a new border command. 4, set up Great British Energy. 5, crack down on antisocial behaviour. 6, recruit 6,500 new teachers. My 6 fixes for Britain. Well, as I'm about to show you, unfortunately for Sir Keir Starmer, the Times have decided to run with a story today highlighting that none of these are new pledges, and therefore...
And they won't do it.
And I think also picking them apart one by one. So, you know, the news giveth, the news taketh away. Let's just bring in my panel on this now, I think. Mark, I'll start with you. Keir Starmer's big 6 pledges, none of which apparently are new, but that hasn't stopped the Mirror splashing with it.
Yeah, and they're not very specific either. Deliver economic stability. That's a bit different to economic growth. I mean, the economy is relatively stable. It's just flatlining. Cut NHS waiting times. Good luck with that, unless you're going to reform the NHS. Border command, maybe. I was talking to the Tory MP Robert Jenrick earlier this week. I think there might be a case for splitting the Home Office into border control and crime prevention. Great British Energy, oh my God, that's going to be the government.
Vanity project.
That's going to have the state trying to run energy. Crackdown on antisocial behaviour, need to see more. Recruit 6,500 new teachers. Where are you going to get the money from? There isn't any.
Well, tax, I would imagine.
We're taxing to the max already, Patrick.
Well, yeah, we are. No, we are.
We can always take more.
You can't. You can't.
38%
in national...
Trust me.
No, I don't trust you, Rebecca. 38% in national income is the most any government in British democratic history has ever squeezed out of the economy.
It was less than 38 at one point, and then it went up. I'm not saying I want it.
38 is the most any government of any stripe has ever been able to get out of the economy.
I'm happy about it. I'm just saying
we're at that peak now. We're at that peak now. There's no more money to be gained.
I don't think there's many people that believe that the Labour Party are going to cut crime.
No, he doesn't even say that. Antisocial behaviour, which would probably be some rules and laws about not being able to swear at various people.
Yeah, possibly graffiti.
I don't believe a word Keir Starmer or Labour Party say.
Do you believe a word that the Tories say, though?
No.
See, this is the problem, isn't it?
At least it'll be someone...
This is it, though, isn't it?
This way, at least it's the ones you don't like in charge, so they'll get to have a break from having to try and find something good about the people in charge and not to be cross.
I mean, it's difficult. I mean, we did a story earlier on about how, you know, there was quite... we treated it as good news. It looked as though we'd stood up to the mighty Irish and said, we're not going to be taking back illegal migrants. And then, you know, today it turns out we've actually been doing that. Yeah. You know, and there's a lot of these things where you see Rishi Sunak saying one thing, you know, I'll leave the ECHR base. He said, well, I don't think anyone thinks he's got any intention of really...
He's never had.
You know,
never
no,
had.
and I don't think so. But so you lose faith with that, and then you see Keir Starmer's 6 pledges on the front of the Mirror, and you realise none of them are new, actually, and they are quite vague. And one of them is Great British Energy, which is Ed Miliband's job too. Again, it's tax. So, yeah, I suppose modern politics, eh? But Starmer had a blooper today as he failed to read out one of his many scripted insults in the House of Commons. Watch.
Mr. Speaker, he must be the only tech brother on the continent who can't work a debit card or send an email.
Look, we've got to... Sorry, guys. We've got to play that again. We've got to... So he's trying to say...
What's he trying to say?
He's trying to say tech bro. Yeah, so it's tech... OK, you're a tech bro.
I don't think he wrote
Silicon
that line.
Valley. He didn't write it, and he's... Go on.
Mr. Speaker, he must be the only tech brother on the continent who can't work a debit card or send an email.
What's that? It's the but what? It's like he's scared of the word.
But it's like when someone drops a glass in a pub and everyone goes, way. Like, it's nice that one thing that we still have is that when somebody embarrasses themselves, we can all laugh at them.
Yeah.
That's what it means to be
Like
British.
when you used to drop your plate at school dinner.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone,
Well, I tell you what, you're right here. That I would say that was a script written for him, and not the sort of words, language, or intonation that he would usually use. And he just sort of got to it and kind of thought, "What the hell is tech bro?" Whatever. So mind and mouth were not in sync.
But it's just the fundamental lack of kind of human and interpersonal skills. You'd have to laugh it off, wouldn't you? It recoils a bit like this, and it's... I just found it a bit odd. But, hey, you know, I mean, it wouldn't be like me to mess up reading a script that somebody else wrote for them, would it? Now, the NHS have been paying obese men £400 to shift their weight through a trial scheme nicknamed Game of Stones, in an alternative to weight loss groups. So 585 men were sent daily text messages reminding them of their desire to lose weight. My ex used to do that to me. And were told that they'd lose out of the £400 cash if they failed to slim down. So apparently this has proved out to be somewhat of a success, as the men lost an average of 4.8% of their body weight last year. OK. Should cash rewards, though, be rolled out on the NHS? And should it really not just fall on the responsibility of the individual to lose the weight? Adam, you're a man in fact... Sorry, Mark, I don't mean to slag you off here, but yeah, Adam, you're a man who's in especially fine fat. Should the NHS be paying blokes to shift a bit of timber?
Well, firstly, it's sexist. And secondly, I'm not particularly happy that my taxpayer or taxpayers' money is going to be funding many, not all, obese, lazy, greedy people. And you can lose weight if you want to. This is ridiculous.
Well, you can't, yeah. I mean, go on.
Well, I mean, this is a reality TV show, isn't it? Rather than the NHS. Sort of, you know, can you win the £400 prize?
Yeah.
I mean, what's nuts about it is, where does this end? I mean, I'm going to watch my football team on Friday night. I usually have 4 or 5 pints. Supposing I limit myself to 2 or 3, can I get 10 quid from the NHS, please? Supposing I walk to the stadium rather than taking a cab, do I get a £5 kickback from the National Health Service? I think we've got to place this much more on the patient. And for some treatments, if you need certain treatments or help, you need to abide by a particular plan in order for it to work.
I suppose the argument which they are making is that, well, if these people didn't lose weight, that they would end up costing the taxpayer a lot more in the long run anyway. So we might as well, for the sake of a few...
But you're rewarding some that are greedy and lazy. And that is the wrong message to give.
Well, the best way for people to lose weight is to kind of feel that they deserve a better quality of life. So lots of studies show that if you sort of hate yourself, you're more likely to sort of secularly gain weight, lose weight, gain weight, lose weight. At the end of it, you'll be higher than you were to start with. If you can find a way to enjoy nutrition, to cook food that you enjoy, to move your body in a way that feels good, all of those things support weight loss in a sustainable way. This kind of obsessive, got to do it for the money, even though it's not actually enough money for you to change your life forever, that doesn't actually do anything long term. It won't save the NHS any money. And I think also it's just relatively cruel to make people feel badly about themselves.
I'm up for this, though.
Well, I mean, I do think they have volunteer. I don't think the fat blokes... Hang on a minute, the NHS has messaged me and it's saying that I'm a fat...
But I'm up for this. Where do I apply? I mean, I want to lose over...
I don't think you're eligible to...
You're not eligible, Mark.
Over 5% of my body weight, I'm happy for that.
This will be abused. This will be abused as well by some.
I don't think anyone's going to get fat deliberately to make 400 quid.
To be honest with you, I've thought about it. Right, OK. So, coming up, Labour flaunt the fact that they love identity politics.
I haven't even got anything on my lanyard. I'm just wearing it to wind up the Minister for Common Sense.
Plus, with the average fan expected to spend nearly £850 attending a Taylor Swift concert, are fans being exploited, or are they just idiots? My panel are divided on that. I've got more of tomorrow's front pages as well. Stay tuned.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
We've got some good news. Because the King will return to public life, we think he's going to carry out some duties tomorrow.
Wow. And with just a week to go before Prince Harry visits the UK to mark the 10th anniversary of the Invictus Games, could the family see a reunion? Ingrid Stewart, Editor-in-Chief of Majesty magazine, joins us now. Good morning, Ingrid. Lovely to see you. Sometimes with feuding families, it takes an unexpected and potentially life-changing event to bring them together. Are we going to see that now?
I don't think we're going to see William and Harry together, but I do think that King Charles will make an effort to see his son. He'll want to see him. They'll both be in London at the same time, I believe, because it's the Prime Minister's meeting. So there is no real reason why Harry shouldn't see his father. But, you know, for William, it's a bit different. So maybe they'll get together, but I would only be guessing. And my guess is that they probably won't.
Invictus Games, Ingrid, it has been a great triumph for Prince Harry. We shouldn't take that away from him. It'll be fascinating because he's going to be at that service, I think, at St Paul's next week to mark the 10th anniversary of Invictus Games. Will it be odd if there is no other member of the royal family there? Because that's what I'm hearing. There'll be no royals there at all apart from Harry.
I also heard the same thing. I gather that the actor Damon Lewis is actually reading the poem Invictus. And I think that Harry will probably want to, to take the main stage himself. This is his baby, as if it were, and it's something he's worked at very hard, and perhaps one could say one of his few successes. So I think he will want to claim the high ground.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. I've got more front pages for you. We start with the Telegraph. NHS turns on doctors who blow the whistle over safety. Staff claim that their careers have been destroyed as bosses sought to conceal concerns. Now, can I just say, anybody out there who's ever had an experience with the NHS where a loved one has received absolutely awful care, this will come as no surprise to you to learn that the staff are in some way silenced. Anyway, cyclists who kill face life sentences like dangerous drivers. Good. And pay road tax as well. Now, the Times. Primary schools will instruct pupils to ration their time online. Relationships and sex education guidance to be published today, which is tomorrow, sets minimum ages for the first time on lessons about pornography and sexual acts. We've discussed this a little bit already tonight. The Times also, frankly, how do I phrase this? Urinates on Keir Starmer's Big Six pledges by saying that they are no new policies, but they do vow to control borders. So we are having to believe now that Keir Starmer is the man to control the borders. We go to the Daily Express. Britain goes pension cashing crazy, which, to be honest with you, sounds a bit like a giveaway, doesn't it? But there we go. Britons are racing to cash in their pensions early to help with the cost of living. Interesting, this, actually. As the UK economy starts to recover, many pension savers cannot wait to dip into their pension pots. They're cashing in early. So there we go. Right, OK. Now, I'm going to whiz straight on with my press pack here. I've got, as you are well aware by now, the director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Now, here's a story that relates to the UK's supposed cost of living crisis, and it's about Taylor Swift, OK? So, by the end of Taylor Swift's record-breaking tour, she's touted to have made an astounding $2 billion. But she won't be the only winner. So a consumer spending report by Barclays Bank has predicted that her 15 performances across 4 UK cities, so she's performing in Edinburgh, in Liverpool, in Cardiff and London, apparently that is going to boost the UK economy by £1 billion. I think that's remarkable. Apparently, Swifties will each spend 850 quid to attend a gig, forking out on accommodation, tickets, transports, merchandise, a new outfit for a gig. Come on. Anyway, right, whatever. But are the fans, and let's be honest, their parents, getting taken advantage of? Now, Rebecca, Taylor Swift has a brass neck, charging these gullible, idiotic fans £850 a ticket.
I would say that my parents have a lot to complain about, but Taylor Swift tickets is probably not one of them. And I'm not sure that the perception of her fans being teenagers is quite as accurate as I'd like it to be. But yeah, no, I'm going to the Taylor Swift concert. But I think, so my ticket was like £200.
How many times are you going?
Twice. But I'm only paying for it once.
How much is your ticket?
£200
quid.
Wow.
So then I'm going to get the tube there, and I will get quite drunk, but that'll cost like 50 quid. So that's about it. Like one vape and a bottle of tequila, that's not going to be at £850.
I mean, it's supply and demand, right?
Yeah. This is why we need more hospitality, more going on, more people coming, more arts, more creativity. We actually should have built that stupid sphere.
Also,
this is what this country needs.
When you break this down, right, you have the average ticket price is 206 quid, apparently, although the VIP packages are 400. But then the rest of it is an average of £121 on accommodation.
Yeah.
Well, that's nothing to do with Taylor Swift. You're not staying in her hotel for that.
They've still got to travel.
110 on transport, 78 quid on official merchandise, 60 quid quid on a meal beforehand, 216 quid on alcohol, unofficial merchandise and the rest. Well, I mean, only a small proportion of this is Taylor Swift stuff. Yeah. And by the way, it's not boosting the UK economy by £1 billion. If you weren't going to a Taylor Swift concert, you would be spending the money on someone else.
Thank you very much. That's what I thought as well. I mean, I'm not an economist, but I thought just because you are lobbing money in and around Taylor Swift's orbit, does that actually mean you are boosting the UK economy by £1 billion?
Is that not money you might otherwise, like money that I might have put into savings? That
Well, that's great.
That's good. I love
savings money is used. It doesn't just sit in a basement. It is lent for things like investment decisions.
What if it's just like in my bank account?
Yeah.
If it's in my overdraft?
All right.
It's in your bank account.
Okay.
What I will
let's
say,
do this off air.
again, as a parent, I do not know how a normal family can afford to take their kids at £200.
Not for the kids, Adam. It's for
£200 a ticket. I do okay, but wow, if my kids wanted to go and see Taylor Swift,
Adam,
I'm not
for the women in
paying
their 30s,
£200 per ticket.
This football match I'm going to on Friday is 120 quid.
Can I just say,
your kids are too
I agree with you.
They don't want this.
I do agree with you, but I had a look at going and watching United-Liverpool
How much is that?
a few years back, and by the time I'd paid for the train from London back to Manchester, bought the ticket, had whatever I would have on a match day, and that was back when I was really getting stuck in as well, so it was quite a lot, and then come back again, I was like 750 quid lighter.
Also, honestly, every time you've gone to Hendon, it costs that much.
OK, right. Now, Esther McVey announced her desire to ban rainbow lanyards being worn by civil servants, but her Labour colleagues seem to have other ideas. Here's Dawn Butler's mature and measured response.
I haven't even got anything on my lanyard. I'm just wearing it to wind up the Minister for Common Sense and the government who think that it's offensive to bloody show solidarity. So here we go.
OK, all right. Adam, does that just show that Labour are obsessed with identity politics?
I find her very unlikable.
Right, OK.
Was that the question, Adam? I don't think that's what anybody...
That is so childish, and that sort of just, shows and highlights what UK politics is like at the moment. They are like children, whether they've got a red rosette or a blue rosette.
I mean, I'll tell you, the remarkable thing here is it looks like Esther McVey isn't going to be able to ban these lanyards, actually. So we can't even, the government can't even control what the civil service does at lanyard level, let alone anything else.
Look, we are pressed for time, so I'm just going to whiz it on, actually. So Greatest Britain Union Jackass time. Let's do it. Right. OK, so let's start, Mark, with your Greatest Britain.
Honorary Richard Scolyer, the 57-year-old Australian doctor, he has given himself some experimental therapy based on his own research, which appears, early doors, to have actually cured his brain tumour. Wow. Great, let's get rid of the precautionary principle. Good on him.
Good start, Adam.
Mine is a 98-year-old veteran, Henry Rice, who is teaching kids about D-Day. Many kids are not taught about it and don't know about it, so, he's educating children.
And when was D-Day?
Come on,
1944.
What was the date?
I don't know.
6th of June.
Right, OK, all right, you don't need to mug him off. What's this?
Jonathan Yeo, who was the artist who did the portrait of Prince Charles, I think it's fantastic. People were really... I don't understand why people don't like it. It's challenging, but in a good way.
In the fiery pits of hell that Prince Harry created.
It looks like Camilla Parker Bowles' dream came true.
OK, right, the winner is Henry Rice, the wonderful patriotic Adam Brooks. There we go. Right, very quickly now, who is your Union Jackass?
Another medical one, honorary the World Health Organisation. 20% of our vaccines they want, if there's another pandemic, they ain't going to get them. This organisation's a joke. They were a shambles in the last pandemic. We should pull out.
I think his logo is like a snake wrapped around a spear.
That's the international sign for medicine.
Don't like it.
Is it?
Me neither.
Anyway, they're hopeless. They're absolutely hopeless.
And I don't trust them.
All right, go on.
Mine is the worst London mayor we could ever have, Sadiq Khan, for jetting off on his climate nonsense rather than addressing knife crime and gun crime in the capital.
All right, go on, Rebecca.
Mine is Southwestern Water that's told people to just boil their water if they don't want to get that disease that gives you diarrhoea.
What is that disease?
No idea.
What day was it discovered?
Okay.
What day was it discovered?
What day was it discovered? No, right, OK, so today's Union Jackass is the World Health Organisation. Can I just say a massive thank you to my wonderful panel? I have really enjoyed it this evening. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to everybody who's been watching and tuning in as well. It's Headliners next for a more in-depth look at all of tomorrow's papers. And we'll be back tomorrow. And, well, I tell you what, I have got a surprise for you tomorrow that nobody is going to be expecting. It's huge. It will make headlines all over the place. So tune in for that.
Nice.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Sunny spells for many tomorrow, but there will be some heavy showers across the south. Yet again, northern Scotland may well see the highest temperatures. Low pressure dominating down to the southwest, and this weather front's provided a thicker zone of cloud across central areas. That rain from that weather front, though, is tending to peter out, as are the heavier showers we saw earlier. Just a bit of rain just returning to parts of the east coast as we go through the night. For many, it'll be a dry night, quite murky and misty on the eastern coast, and some fog is possible across parts of the south.